What up YouTube, it's Misery Hates Company. In this video, I'm going to give you the very best PvE build for Scarlet Witch. Now, she was introduced to us as the queen of PvP, and she very well might be. In fact, I'm very confident that she is. So much that I'm actually going to have to make several different videos on her best PvP gear. So much so that I'm actually going to have to make several videos on the best PvP build for Scarlet Witch, because there are several different efficient builds that will be fantastic in PvP. It's really just up to your playstyle and all of that, but that's a video for a different day, or videos. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel to catch all of those videos and keep that bell notification on, because I don't want you to miss a single one of these videos. But like I said, this video is all about PvE, player versus environment, and Scarlet Witch is actually fantastic in PvE. So this is the one and all best build for PvE. Let's jump straight into the video. First off, from aesthetics alone, I think we all need to agree that Dark Domain is the best looking skin for Scarlet Witch. Okay, now that we're past that, we can get on to the actual best gear for the PvE side of Scarlet Witch. First things first, we cannot talk about gear without talking about the true best possible gear in the game, which is easily the special costumes. Now, if you wanted to double down on PvE, whether it be if you're a whale or very, very long term as a free to play, when you could get special gear farther down the road, hopefully, that's going to be Steampunk. Steampunk is going to be the one that increases your hex skills and your hex projection. That is going to double down on the two types of skills that do the most just pure damage, which is what you're going to want to go for in PvE, which again is the hex skills. So Steampunk is the go-to there. Now, when we talk about regionals, you have a few different options. One that I would prioritize over the other, but if you get either one, these are totally fine. The first best is going to be Xanderth. Xanderth is going to be because it gives you crit damage. Now, I prefer crit damage over defense pen when it comes to PvE content. I do prefer defense pierce over crit damage when it comes to PvP, but this video is all about PvE. And again, at that 4 set, we are getting that juicy hex energy class skill +6, which is what we want. Now, like I said, if you land and you are okay with some D-pen in your build, Hydra is also a very good option because it still upgrades your hex energy class skills, but it does give you defense pen instead of the crit damage. Like I said though, crit damage is more of a priority in my opinion, and we'll actually get to that when we talk about the stats for this overall build. But again, this is a very good, solid option. Now, for those of you that want a free-to-play option, I actually have two for you. So if you cannot get a regional because this is maybe you're free-to-play and this is a second character for you, then there are two options, like I said. The first one is going to be disassembled. This is actually the one that I would prefer between the two. I will start with that. That's because you get crit damage, which is great, and you get hex release skill, which is one of your better hex release or hex skills in general. So again, you're getting hex and crit damage, and it's not a regional or a special. This is definitely a good free-to-play option. Now, as a backup, let's say you get a few of these and you can't get disassembled, but you get maybe Call of the Mountain. This is a decent option. Again, it gives you hex release skill, which is the same skill, but then it does give you D-pen, which is again not preferred, but a decent option nonetheless because of the 4-set bonus. So that's going to do it for the gear. Let's go ahead and jump over to the skills, and the skills are actually pretty spicy. So first things first, you're going to want to do an opener that increases your overall attack, because in PvE you don't have to dodge all that much unless there's some bad on the ground that you need to dodge out of. So the first thing I want you to do is have this witchcraft skill called Terror Consumption. This is the farthest right skill and the farthest right of that sub skill, and it's called Terror Consumption. Like I said, it actually teleports forward, and then your clone of yourself or your illusion will actually power you up and give you stacks of attack up to 30% for 10 seconds. So again, this is basically just your opener, and you're untargetable while you use this skill, so you can use it as like a free dodge if there's something on the ground, but then it also does give you the flat attack bonus. Next, we want to lower the defense of that target that we're fighting. So in this case, I actually picked Witch's Descent, which is a witchcraft skill, has a 16-second cooldown, and what it does is quickly moves forward and to fire multiple energy orbs to deal 404% damage, decrease defense of enemies standing in the caster's path, deals more damage and max double guard damage if energy hits the same target. So again, if you are in a alliance raid or just a regular raid or a dungeon and you're fighting just one person at a time, this is going to do a lot of damage and lower their guard. So avoids being targeted by enemies while using the skill. So again, we have two untargetable abilities in the beginning, which is great. Now that we have buffed our attack, lowered their defense, it's time to blow them up. And this is where the Hex skills come to play. So first things first is this one, which is Hex Lightning. You do 931% damage, just click, point, and boom. It does have a 15-second cooldown, which isn't terrible, but it does have a 29 required stamina, which we'll talk about here a little bit later, because you are going to be stam starved to a certain point with this build, which is why it's very critical that you watch this video to the very end, because I want to help you make sure that you always have enough stamina to do all these skills as much as possible. Next up is actually going to be a Chaos Sphere, or a Chaos skill, which is Chaos Sphere. This does 995% damage, a ton of damage, 23-second cooldown, and it does more damage because it actually applies 13% of your attack per second as a dot. A dot stands for damage over time. So for 5 seconds, they get a tick of 13% of your total attack. That is just free attack, free damage for attack, which you're going to have by default. So free damage on damage on damage, which is great. And then next up, and last but not least, is actually going to be another Hex skill, which is going to be Hex Break. I picked this one because it only has a 9-second cooldown. In the event that you get max CDR, you're looking right around 4 or 5% cooldown on this, which allows you to keep doing it more and more and more. So it does only require 16 stamina. Again, practically nothing, very good. And it does 416% damage, and it actually hits multiple enemies like it's showing in the video. So that is going to do it for the skills for PvE. Again, there's some different options there, but this is what I would recommend when it comes to dungeons, raids, alliance raids, anything like that. Moving on, let's go ahead and go to the cards as well as the stats. So the cards in general, you really, especially as a free-to-play, you're going to want to use whatever you can. So right now, I'm running attack with supervillain damage, attack with supervillain damage, cooldown, attack, PvP, meh. Then I got crit rate and then crit damage. So which leads us into the stat priority that I would recommend, because it doesn't really matter the specific cards. If you have special cards, you're basically going to want to use the special cards. But in terms of the stats you want to look for on any card is actually going to be in this order, would be crit rate, crit damage, cooldown, and then stamina recovery. So that goes for your badges, your cards, your cores. That is going to be the stat priority I want you to focus on in this build. That's going to net you the most damage on the targets that you're going to be fighting against in PvE. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into specializations, because the specializations are a lot of fun. There's really, at least in my opinion, when it comes to PvE, there's only one specialization set that works the absolute best. And she does have a fantastic skill tree when it comes to specializations, but like I said, only 4 that really do the best for PvE. So the first one I want you to use is going to be Essence Aptitude. Increase all damage dealt to supervillains by a % amount for 8 seconds when using a Hex energy skill. Again, you're using 2 of those. It has a cooldown of 15 seconds, so you're basically going to keep this on cooldown nonstop. It lasts for 8 seconds, and then basically half of the cooldown you don't have it, half of the cooldown you do have it. Not bad at all. It's going to just give you a ton of damage, especially in those raids and alliance raids and even dungeons. So make sure you pick that one up first. Next up is basically just flat % bonus damage. So it's Hex Domination, which is a yellow one. It does increased damage dealt to immobile targets or target with status effects, which is basically going to be all of them, because your opener increases your attack and then lowers their defense, and you're also going to apply a dot or damage over time to them. So yeah, you're basically always going to have a status effect on them, and this just nets you more damage. Speaking of damage, again, that's what we're focusing on with PvE. The best thing you want to look at is increase all skill damage, booyah, to enemies by a % amount, but it also increases your required stamina. Now, like I said, stamina is going to be an issue and something that we want to prioritize. We talked about it a little bit with our stats, especially your boots. You want to make sure you have at least 2 rolls of stam recovery, maybe even 3, depending on where you're getting stam recovery or even cooldown from other areas of your build, such as your gear, your cards, the bonus stats, anything. You want to make sure you have a really good amount of stam recovery as well as cooldown. So this is going to give you a ton of attack at the cost of stam. However, this one, which Mystic Stamina, recovers stamina by a % amount once every 5 times a skill is used. Now, before you hate on this, I've tested it pretty thoroughly, and it's not so. As soon as you do, you get this buff of stamina, right? So you do your full all 5 skills, they're all on cooldown, you immediately get the stamina, right? So not over time, you immediately get the stamina, which is good because your stamina is gonna be pretty low. And as soon as you get this, and while this is on cooldown, it is still counting the skills that you're using. So you use all 5 skills, you get the stamina % increase back, and then let's say you use your another skill. While this is on cooldown, it's still counting towards the 5. So I was able to keep this on cooldown basically with my skill rotation that I gave to you, which is why I precisely picked the ones that I did, because between the cooldowns and the stam that you get out of it, you actually get a nice little stam machine out of Scarlet Witch, which is fantastic, and you do a ton of damage in PvE. So that's going to do it for the specializations. Those are the 4 that I would pick. I really wouldn't even suggest even looking at any of the other ones for PvE. Now, like I said, I am doing different videos for PvP because there are some fantastic builds for Scarlet Witch. In fact, there is more than one that is obviously going to be viable. And that's where you get a little bit hairy with the specializations. But for PvE, these are the 4 you have to use. Have to. Now, last but not least, I did want to go ahead and talk about companions because you got some decent options there. The first one, and the one that I use the most, is actually, obviously, the one equipped, which is Punisher. The reason I picked Punisher is that if you were to get him to 5 or 6 stars, you get supervillain damage % increase, which is nice. His collection stat is attack, which is beautiful. And also for his just fixed effects, he does have high attack and high HP at the cost of lower defense, which is totally fine because you shouldn't be really getting hit that much in PvE. You want more attack, which is what he has. Also for his skill, he is a summonable companion, lasts 12 seconds, cooldown is 43 seconds, applies 30.29% of the attack of the hero's attack, inflicts a burn upon attacking guard break target, and then damage to supervillain is also increased. So you do a ton of damage to supervillains, and which is why he would be my go-to. Next up is going to be Baron Mordor, which where is home dude? Mordo. So he's actually right here. His XP gain is the collection stat. His bonus effect, if you get him to 5 or 6 star, which I don't have either one of them at these, but you do get defense and then HP, which is meh, okay. But the really cool thing is that here at the skills, if you are using on, it's called overflowing mana, and you get increased attack, ultimate gauge recovery, and cooldown by 13%, and then 19.5% increase attack, which means you just get to blow people up, which is awesome. And this is good for Doctor Strange, Magic, and now Scarlet Witch, which is why he is also very good option for Scarlet Witch in PvE or PvP. Little teaser there. The last 2 that I would recommend have been in the game for a while. And that's going to be Thena and, not her, and Circe. So Thena actually increases the attack of your party and does a little bit of damage. And then Circe decreases the defense of the target. So you can either boost the attack of your whole team, or you can lower the defense of the target that your team is fighting. Both of them are very good for PvE, especially in the Alliance raid or dungeon environment. So I would definitely recommend one of those 2 as a viable option as well. There's several other options when it comes to companions, but these are just the top 4 that I would recommend for this build with how you're building your Scarlet Witch. So that's actually going to do it for this video. That is the overall best build for Scarlet Witch in PvE. Now, this is very single target focused. So if you want to see my build that I actually use on Spec Ops for Scarlet Witch, I would highly encourage you to look at this video right now, because it is slightly different, especially when it comes to the skills that I use in that environment. But they are very, very strong, and she's actually almost as good, if not better, than Storm, which is huge. So make sure you check out this video right now.